Welcome to Season 2 of the SHIELD Armory podcast. This podcast is a place specifically for law enforcement, dispatchers, and their families to find strength, support, and real conversations that matter. I'm one of your three hosts, Adam Hughes, a chaplain and a fellow warrior in this journey. Joining me this season, as usual, will be chaplains Darren Potter and Garrett Stevenson. The three of us and our service and facility dog, Scarlett, make up the team of SHIELD Chaplaincy in Roanoke, Virginia. This season, we're stepping into deeper territory, bringing you raw and real interviews with police officers, command staff, and voices from outside the badge who get it. Culturally competent leaders and professionals who understand the pressures of this calling. We're talking about the job, the trauma, the relationships, the faith, and the fight to stay grounded when the world feels like it's spinning out of control. Every guest this season brings experience, wisdom, and a heart for law enforcement. Whether you're on patrol, at the desk, or holding it down at home, you're not alone. This is your armory. This is your shield. Let's suit up. Well, guys, I got to be honest, I am super excited about today's episode. This is something that we put on the radar for the SHIELD Armory before the SHIELD Armory was the SHIELD Armory. When it was just a dream, one of the things that we had talked about in the room was, man, wouldn't it be cool one day if the Chiefs would be willing to sit down with us and have a conversation about what life is like as a Chief, kind of how they got there. And lo and behold, we put it out and they accepted. I was shocked. I'll be honest.
Yeah, and actually, the guest we have with us today was the first one to jump on board with this idea.
Yes, and
so we are very thrilled to have him with us.
Yeah, super excited. So Chief, here's what we'd like to do. I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. But if you would just quickly tell us who you are, what department you're with, for people who are listening and may not know you, and just give us a little bit of rundown about who you are and about life, and then we're going to dive in some questions.
Sure. I am Mike Poindexter. I'm the Chief of Police with the Roanoke County Police Department. I've been serving in this position since January of 2023, but I've been with the department close to 31 years now.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. What a career. I imagine you've seen a lot in those 31 years.
Just a little.
A little bit of change too, probably. So
a lot of change, but for the better.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, could you just kind of give us just a little bit of a snapshot of Chief Poindexter and who he is, and tell us just a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got connected to us. That way people kind of know as we get ready to dive in this episode.
Sure. I started the department August 15th of 1994, and at the time, I wanted to be a police officer, but I wasn't real sure about it.
Okay.
So things progressed, and I made detective a few years later, and after working as a detective, I promoted to sergeant and commander, and I was fortunate enough to serve as acting assistant chief for a period of time, and then after that, I made chief of police in January of 2023.
That's really awesome.
Wow, that's a journey.
It is. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of good people at the Roanoke County Police Department. So when I say I made chief, I feel like we made chief.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I hear the chaplain program at Roanoke County is like exquisite. Do you think that was foundational in how you...
It's almost like I pay his salary or something. I don't know.
Well, you joke, but it's great to have this program with the department. I've seen how it's grown and how the officers use the program, so it's indispensable. We have to have it.
Wow.
Well, I'll say Roanoke County has been really good to me from the day I started with Roanoke County, which really SHIELD was launched in September of 2018, and by December, really. Just before I went full time in January of 19, with SHIELD Chaplaincy, began that relationship with Roanoke County under the previous chief, and it just continued from there. And I'm actually for those who may not know, I'm actually part time with Roanoke County as a chaplain life coach role there, and which really I'm grateful for, because it opened up the door to allow us to expand and bring on a full-time chaplain with SHIELD, and that's how we got Gareth. So you can decide if that's a good thing or not, but
we're moving to the next question. Moving to the next question.
No, that's cool. So I find it awfully interesting when you gave us that snapshot of your journey, that when you started, you were like, I was unsure. And now you sit here as the chief of police for Roanoke County. So Chief, when I hear you say that, like, what goes through your mind when you think back to that guy who was unsure about whether he even wanted to be a police officer to now sitting in the most high-ranking position?
Well, I was almost 22 years old at the academy, and at the time it was only 12 weeks. But we had a lot of characters in our class. we all graduated and started our separate journeys, but I had a few great friends that were Roanoke County police officers too. And those friends helped me along the way, as well as other police officers that I got to know.
That's really cool.
Did you have in your family, anybody that was military service, law enforcement, or are you kind of the pioneer?
I did have a cousin who was a Metro DC police officer.
Oh, wow.
And I never had to look far from home for role models.
Yeah.
But he was one as well, and that led me in this direction.
Awesome.
Well, let's dive into this one question I've been really looking forward to that we're going to get to ask, because we've snapshotted that journey from the beginning to now. But let's talk a little bit about how your perspective has changed when you think back to, going into as just a regular patrol officer coming out of academy, kind of working your way through there, to now having this wide 30,000-foot view as a chief. How has your perspective changed in that?
I think it's grown daily, and what a lot of the newer people miss is the big picture. You have to want to see everything. And when you do an investigation or when you're working patrol, you think you see everything, but there's that larger volume that you need to see on a daily basis. You have to have the bandwidth to accomplish short-term goals and long-term goals. And generally, what I see now is, how can I help the department, or what are we doing to improve the officers' value or their lifestyle?
Wow. So we would just like to say thank you for that. Sometimes we meet with people, and what we hear, Scripture says, out of the overflow of your heart, your mouth speaks. And sometimes we hear from leaders of organizations that they want progress, or they want to reduce blank or increase whatever. And the officer's not really at the center of that. Kind of what we hear from you is what wakes you up in the morning is we want to make sure that our officers are well. That's awesome.
And the thing is, we have officers that are working 24 hours a day. So while I'm at home in bed asleep, we still have officers out working.
Yeah.
And do I worry about them? To a point. But we also provide them great training and equipment. And I rely on that training and their instincts to keep them safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a little bit unreasonable to take let's say a 2-year officer work in a traditional district. It would be unreasonable for that officer to see things the way a 31-year veteran who is the chief of police sees it. So there's always going to be a disconnect there because they see it with blinders on, right? And you don't. You see the totality.
I don't think they see it with blinders. They see it from their perspective. So for me, I have an open door policy, and I'm willing to talk to the officers about whatever they want to talk about. And hopefully during that time that we talk, I can help them see my perspective as well as listen to their perspective, and we can meet somewhere in the middle and have common ground.
Is that part of mentorship and taking that wisdom that you have just from surviving the craziness of this career for 31 years and you're kind of handing it down to them?
I like to try to help them along the way, but once they find their niche, I want to ensure that they're doing what they want to do and then help them with it, yes.
Oh, wow.
I recently was meeting with an officer, and he's been an officer for quite some time, has worked several different what's the right word? Assignments within his career. I was just drawing a blank there. But one of the things he said to me was his newest assignment that he just finished his first year in. He said, all this time, I always looked down on this particular thing. But after spending the last year doing it, I think I finally found what I was made to do. And when you said that, it made me think about that conversation, because he said, this is really, I have found what I'm passionate about. And the saddest part is, all those years, I had a completely unrealistic perspective on what it was and had no idea. And now I'm like, this is the greatest job within police work.
And we have a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, but they're all important. And a lot of times the newer officer may lose sight of that, or not realize what that position does, or how they help the department move forward.
I know one of the guys, regular conversations that we have as chaplains with officers is when they're kind of trying to process things that are happening with departments. And I love what you said, because it was all about perspectives. You're making decisions for an agency for the greater good of the whole, thinking about every officer, but for the greater good of the whole. And one of the hardest things for other people to see is they don't have all those pieces of the puzzle that you have, but you're able to kind of take all of those pieces and start to line them up and say, this is what makes sense. This is what is good for our department. So when you talk about perspective, can you speak into that a little bit, just about having that greater vision and being able to see all those pieces and being able to do what's best for the greater good of the whole when it comes to your agency?
I think the biggest part of that is having a great team, and then placing those team members in the correct places. Yeah. And I'm fortunate that I do have an administrative staff that is a great staff, but we also have civilian and sworn personnel who go above and beyond every day to make sure we perform at a high level.
That perspective thing, I think the first time I saw it from a chief was just went into one of the chiefs and number ones that we serve in a couple of different departments, and they I said, how are you doing today? And they begin to list off all of the incidents that happened nationally. Just this exhaustive list, and how it correlated to a recent incident we had in our jurisdiction. And I thought, that's what keeps him awake at night. He's keeping a pulse on things happening in the entire nation. I'm asking, what's it look like in your office? And he's going, whoa, it's bigger than this. And we got to keep a pulse on that. That's a pretty heavy weight.
It is, but it's a responsibility that I choose to carry.
Yeah.
And as long as I can keep an eye on what's going on locally and nationally, and then see how it relates to our department and make good choices, I think we're fine.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that has been interesting to me is the generations of law enforcement. And if they could see the smile on your face right now, it is different. And as you said, in a good way, there's some good things. One of the things that we have seen serving both generations is we'll call it the old guard, the warriors, the guys that have been around, and we stand on their shoulders. The things that today that we have are because they've handled their job well. They woke up every single morning and they were moved with this idea that I produce, that I have high expectations, and I have high achievements. And I don't need relationships. I don't need that. I come to work. I don't need a relationship with my supervisor. I produce. I go home. We go on with life. That's kind of what we're seeing from that generation. That motivates them. And our young generation, we are sitting at the police academy, so we get the privilege of being around the next generation of officers on a daily basis. That doesn't motivate them like it used to. What motivates them is the relational security. They know that they have someone that cares for them, that invests in them. And kind of we've seen the pros and cons of that. If you have high productivity expectation, you're just going to suck the life out of somebody, use them, and then put them on the shelf. If you have high relationship, you'll sit in a parking lot and not do anything for 12 hours and go home. So that there's negatives of both. Do you have a perspective on that? Have you seen that?
I have. I think the older generation, which is kind of funny we say that because I'm now considered a part of the older generation.
Not pointing fingers.
I feel that on a deep level.
and our new recruits that come in look at me and they're thinking, well, that's the old guy. Well, not long ago, I was the new guy. So we send our supervisors to a training to adapt to the changing times. And it's something that we all have to do at some point. So our biggest key for the department is to identify how the times are changing, to adapt to what we're doing, to how it can help us, and also then move forward. So yes, times are changing and police work has changed, but it's up to the senior leadership to identify the changes, to work on those changes and see how we can improve our department.
Wow. So you send your supervisors to that school. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yes, all of our first line supervisors who directly supervise new officers go to that training within the first year of promotion.
Wow.
Yes.
That's way cool.
I have not heard that.
I did not
from
know that
other
either.
jurisdictions.
That is awesome.
In fact,
And I don't want to name the program.
no,
but
yeah, you're okay.
That's totally okay. Yeah.
It's a great program, and we use it. We've used it regularly. I went 20 years ago, and the material has changed, but it's still the core values that you learn in that class that help you relate to
So
the
you're
newer officer.
equipping the supervisor. I can't. How many times have you guys heard?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get a book to be a sergeant, or I didn't get training to be a sergeant. I got stripes, and they said, "Survive. Good luck."
And it's no longer that way. You have to, if you expect a sergeant to work midnight shift by himself and make decisions for the department, then equip him with the tools he needs to do the job.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So Chief, let's talk about you for just a minute.
Sure.
We're, one of the things that we would love to dive into, and I think we're seeing this play out just in what we've talked about already. But we want to just ask the question straight out. Chief, what things are you passionate about? Obviously, I love that, like this you're just talking about the first line supervisor training. That's a big deal because you're training your people to be who they need to be. But as far as Chief Poindexter, what things are you passionate about?
Well, first and foremost, our officers and our staff, our civilian staff, they move the department forward, and I enjoy all of them. I also think that our school resource officer program is very important. Recently, we started an elementary school SRO program, and with grant money, and we have been fairly successful, but the goal is to fill all 16 elementary schools with personnel. And for me, it's a chance that our officers interact with the students and staff in a situation that's not law enforcement related. So it's not a traumatic situation where someone sees a police officer. They see them there every day. They're used to seeing the officer. They talk to the officer, as opposed to maybe a traffic stop or someone calling 911 and having to have a police officer come to your home. So the SRO program is invaluable to us.
I will say this. I will not mention the school's name or the officer's name, but one of Roanoke County's SROs from an elementary school asked me to come read to some first graders. And I will say, is oddly enough, after I read to the first class, the SRO is like, "Hey, chap, if you want, I can read to the others." And as I don't apparently,
That would be a hint. I'm not a detective. That was a subtle hint.
Those books are a little difficult if it's been a while since you've read those children's books. But I will say it was that SRO had, you could tell just walking into that school,
They have a passion for it.
They have a passion for it. And the connections that they are making, the relationships they have built with the students, with the staff, it was very obvious.
Those relationships are lifelong. And just to give you a quick story, at the last academy graduation, we had a retiree who was going to become a school resource officer. Well, a friend of his was here for the graduation. Turns out that friend was my school resource officer when I was in junior high school.
Wow.
So we talked for a while because he remembered me and I remembered him. So those relationships last forever.
So that's investing in community equity.
Yes, it is.
And that's a heavy, heavy thing we can leverage.
It's the best investment you can have, and no dollar amount places a value on that. You invest in the children, and they see those relationships, and they flourish over years. You just can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about the safety aspect.
Correct.
This is just a community investment. That's huge. I tell you, thinking about this, I was on a call for service with another department. We don't have to name or go through the details, but there was a call for service that turned out to be a little bit misrepresentation of what initially came in. But one of the SROs happened to be working overtime with the shift and knew the family, knew everybody there, was able to actually locate and correct the situation, called the child by name, and de-escalated the entire situation because they had we didn't have a relationship with the person. We had no clue. We were just trying to solve the problem.
Exactly. And generally, most citizens come into contact with police officers during a traumatic event.
Yeah.
But when children and staff members from the school can meet us on a regular basis every day, and it's nothing traumatic, it helps build that relationship.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
huge. So you're passionate about taking care of people and investing in people, the SROs. What else kind of makes your heart beat?
For me, another big point is when our officers are recognized for the work they perform. I see it on a regular basis, and I don't get a chance to recognize them enough. But when we have our annual awards ceremony or when they have the Officer of the Month presentation, it shows that these officers are going above and beyond to help others.
Yeah.
So that means a lot to me.
It's huge.
Yes.
It's huge. I've got the privilege of attending some of those, and it's awesome to see the senior leadership, as you would say it, note and point out, hey, this is a behavior we're proud of. That builds a really neat culture.
Yes.
And I think we've seen kind of a move across our area of saying, hey, that didn't cost that much. That creates a pretty cool culture. Why don't we do that? And so we're kind of seeing these award banquets kind of move throughout the departments we serve, that they're doing that.
We have our awards banquet every year, and every year it ggets bigger. So it's great to have family and friends attend, and they get to see the work that their family members are performing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And it is funny, you know, you talk to the, the officers, they kind of downplay some of those awards and things like that, and talk like it's not that big of a deal, or I'm being recognized. Why are they recognizing all this? They like it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes to be appreciated, and sometimes people on the surface will say one thing or whatever, but it is imperative, I think, that you continue doing those kind of things.
Yes.
And I'm glad to see that Roanoke County does that. It's, again, everybody likes to have that attaboy, attagirl, good job, and be recognized for that, because it's, if we're not recognizing those things in our own, sometimes it doesn't happen. And in fact, a lot of times it doesn't happen.
That's correct.
Well, let's flip the switch for just a minute and kind of go the other direction just for a second. And it's real easy for those who look on to you and look on to your position. And if you're listening to this podcast, there is some work being done on the building that we're in the police academy today, and they are on top of the roof right above us, beating and banging and dropping equipment and all that kind of stuff. So if you hear any rumblings,
I thought we died.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went red. Chief talked me down.
Yeah,
Yes.
it sounds like a thunderstorm almost, but there is some rumbling going on. If you hear that, we don't have any control over that. But going back to this, Chief, on the human side of things, those who are looking in and they see the things. Some people see the things as the nice office, the Eagles on the collar, the nice car that the chief gets to drive. But Chief, can you just for a minute speak into what is the true challenge of being the chief of a department and being, and maybe not necessarily even Roanoke County, but just holding the position of chief in a department? What is the true challenge, and maybe some of the harder parts of that you see, that you've experienced, that you could just say, hey, look, you see all these things, but this is what you don't see.
Well, it's not like you see on television, of course.
Right.
But you have a budget you deal with annually. You want to make sure that your people are taken care of, but you also have to make sure you have people. One of the biggest problems nationwide right now is staffing.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be fully staffed at one point, and 3 weeks later, we may have retirements or people decide to change careers. So it's a never-ending journey trying to have enough people here to do the job.
Yeah, that's something, guys. We know we every department we serve, and even the departments we work with regionally, everybody's saying the same thing. Like, this is like you said, it's a nationwide problem. Yes. This is not a Roanoke Valley problem. This is not a Virginia problem. This is a United States problem. And my guess is a worldwide problem, not just a national problem.
Now, fortunately for us, though, we enjoy a tremendous amount of community support in Roanoke County, as well as support from our board members and from our administration. But you have to show that support to potential recruits to have them understand this is where you want to be, because we enjoy that support.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think it's even really important, so you show it to them in the recruit phase, but then they also continue to feel that from the department once they're actually on board doing their job, those kind of things. So
Yes.
it's a continual process.
I think some things I've heard and just seeing some family that are law enforcement on both sides and some military. And when those people close to me applied to the police department many moons ago, there were several hundred applicants. There were several hundred qualified applicants. And these individuals with military service, high PT standard, were waitlisted. That is not what we're seeing today. That's not what we're experiencing. That's got to be a challenge.
It is. There was a time that we would have an application process and there would be a line out the door with applicants. But nowadays, fewer people have an interest in law enforcement. So we're trying to start earlier. We're identifying students in high school or community college, and we try to foster those relationships so that they want to come to the Roanoke County Police Department.
Yeah.
So can I just add, this wasn't really part of this, but I'm just kind of curious based off of this conversation. How do you think the change in media and the narrative of social media and news and all that kind of stuff, how do you think that's having a tremendous effect on that?
It does have an effect, and it goes in ebbs and flows. And 4 or 5 years ago, it was very negative. It's starting to come around again, but it'll change at some point. The important constant will be how we perform our job and how the citizens see what we do and how we do it.
And circling back for a moment, you're talking about the SROs and really just the impact that an officer can have on a child's life. You know, several months back, I was talking with an officer in another department, and he made a comment that it was an officer coming to, you know, where he lived and interacting with him and giving out that sticker badge,
Yes.
you know, which seems kind of silly, but to a child, to see someone in authority, someone that has got this badge and is in the community making a difference, to take the time to talk to a child and say, hey, yeah, maybe one day you can, and that kind of interaction is what inspired that young man
It's
to
the
pursue law
positive
enforcement.
interaction that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah.
There were years ago I would work off duty, and say if we're at the mall and a parent would come up and say, see that officer? If you're bad, he's going to arrest you. And I wouldn't chastise the parent at the time, but I would kind of pull them aside and explain, well, if you do this now, what will they think of the police in the future? How about let me talk to your son, let him see that I'm a person too, so that if he's lost in the mall, he'll come to somebody in a uniform and ask for help as opposed to fearing the police. So it's
right.
You have to make the positive contacts.
You made the comment right as you started that you said these are, you know, things that make effects for a lifetime.
Yes.
Is what you were saying. I remember I worked for a missions organization for a short period of time, and when you would walk in the front door, they had a quote on the front walls. It was right over the secretary's desk when you walk in, and it was Vernon Brewer, who's the president of World Help. He's known for saying, my goal is to do one thing every day that will outlive me and last for eternity. You know, and I've so many times I thought about that as soon as you said that, because those type of things, like you said, those are lifetime effects. You know,
Yes.
those type of things. So, well, we've talked about some of the greatest challenges. Now let's have some fun. Let's talk about some of your greatest moments as chief. Let's talk about some of the things that you look back and you think, man, that was awesome. That was a great moment. What are some of those things for you, Chief?
Well, I've spent some time as an investigator and a supervisor of investigators, so I had a chance to work multiple cases and work with other detectives on cases, particularly back in 2010, I believe it was. We worked a capital murder case, and it was a bad case, but to be able to help the family find closure really meant a lot to me. And to this day, I still see that family in the grocery store every now and then, and they remember me, so that
huge.
means a lot to me, yes.
And you talk about things that make lasting lifetime moments, you know, with people, because not only are they going to feel it, but they're going to tell everybody in their circle
Exactly.
that they know as well, you know, and that makes long lasting change.
And also the friendships you make while you're here. When I went to the academy, I believe there were about 8 or 9 of us that went to a regional academy class. To this day, I'm still friends with at least 5 or 6 of those people, and 1 or 2 have retired from our department, but we still keep in contact.
Just for 1 second, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but what do those type of relationships mean to you?
Oh, they mean the world. I mean, the people that I went to the academy with, one of the guys was in my wedding. So we've been lifelong friends. I've seen the birth of his children, and he just recently had a grandchild. So it's a lifelong friendship.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
Well, and I was just going to say, I don't want to, certainly don't want you to share anything that, we can keep this in general terms, but,
Okay.
31 years on the job, what's been helpful for you in general terms to keep that family life going, like keep that separation? Like, how do you like have the uniform on and then say, okay, when I go home, I don't want to wear the uniform inside my house. You probably don't want to talk to your wife the same way that you talk to someone that you just caught, shoplifting or whatever.
Well, I try to differentiate between work life and family life, but starting about 2023, once I became chief, it kind of runs together some. So I try to set a boundary, but at 3:00 in the morning, if my cell phone rings, I'm going to answer it.
Sure.
But we have enjoyed a great career so far, and some of the balance I find is if I'm spending family time, I kind of define that time and don't get on my cell phone or don't listen to a police radio or look at a laptop for calls for service. But other times when I'm off, I may do that. It's just we define time that's not work related.
So you're intentional about setting the boundaries.
Yes.
Hey, I'm at work. I'm not at work now, and you get me fully.
Exactly.
That's
or
huge.
if I'm working and there is an emergency, I'll cut out time from work to take care of what needs to be taken care of at home. But I try to give both the appropriate amount of time.
Awesome. And this may be a little bit personal, and you may say, no thanks, and we'll move to the next question, but has it always been that way, or is that something that you have developed?
I think I've always tried to do it. And now that I'm in this position, I get to see the value of doing that because it gives each the appropriate amount of time and energy.
So I would assume, based off of what you just said, that if there is a chief somewhere listening to this episode, you would say to them, if you were sitting in the room to them, it's really important that you focus and you do a good job at what you do, but it's also really important that you carve that time out and you make sure your family knows they're as much valued as that job.
And a lot of police officers will give all that they have at work, but you should give that same all at home with your family too. That way nobody takes a second seat to either.
Wow.
It's one of the things we try to do with SHIELD is try to help officers see that, whether someone stays on a job for 10 years or they make a full career out of it like you have and 31 years now, at some point, even Chief Poindexter is going to retire. And, it's going to be important that you have nurtured those relationships with family so that when you retire, you still have those relationships. And it's easy. It seems, in working with law enforcement for back when I started volunteering and now full-time, it's 16 years working with law enforcement. It's one of these types of careers that can be all-consuming if you allow it.
Yes.
And there's just all types of negative things that can grow out of that if we allow that to happen. So,
Yeah, that identity gets the best of you.
Definitely.
Talking to an officer recently that pretty heavy and specialized units and pretty high bandwidth assignments, we'll say. And we were talking about making sure that if we choose to take another one of those, what's that going to cost at home? And they literally said this: it cost me one marriage, I guess it'll cost me a second.
Oh my. You have to have time to decompress, and then once you decompress, let the family have that time too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what he said and communicated was the number one in my life is my identity as an officer. And now we're on marriage too.
Wow.
So that's the bookend. What we're hearing from you is the other side of the fence. Don't let it do that. Prioritize time. You can be a chief of police, and you can also be a father and a husband.
Yes.
You can do both, and you can do it well. That's encouraging.
well, and I very much appreciate what you said, that if you do have that call, things fire off and you get that phone call 2-3 o'clock in the morning that may keep you tied up for the next day, 2
Next
days,
48 hours. Yeah.
But you also said, if that happens, I'm going to step away and take time with my family and kind of make up for what was lost. And I don't see that happen enough. It's something I have always tried to do with my own family. And again, I appreciate that you prioritize home life in that way. And that's a good example.
Over the course of your career, I'm going to assume that the next question I'm going to ask is going to be something that you have seen evolve fairly heavily. The stigma around mental health, and especially within the first responder and law enforcement community, has been just that for many years. It was a stigma, and now we're trying to unpack all of that and make that something that's not one of those words where people cringe when they hear anymore. It's one of those things where we're taking care of people and making sure that they're okay at work and they're okay at home. That's what we want. I think I heard Gareth say it the first time ever. We want healthy hire, healthy retire.
That's correct.
And so, Chief, how have you seen the whole concept of officer wellness evolve over your time as chief?
I think it's done a complete 180 degrees, which is great. We need it to make sure that if we have someone who comes in as a recruit and works that 25-year career, that when they retire and go back home to their family and they want to live a good retirement life, that they're healthy physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the steps we've taken ensure that their mental health is there as well. Part of our wellness program, we have annual mental health check-ins, and that's huge. There was a time that wouldn't have even been considered. But now we're improving, we're adding different tools to our tool belt to make sure our officers are ready when they go out.
Yeah. As far as that's concerned too, so you have the yearly check-ins, and then can you talk just a little bit about like what peer support looks like for you all and kind of what kind of role that plays within your department?
For us, that's important as well. We have the peer support, we have our CISM group. I think now you see a lot more debriefs after hot incidents or traumatic incidents, as opposed to years ago, you would have a critical incident and people would go home and not discuss it. Now you do a debrief, you talk about it. You have to make sure everyone has healed from that incident, as opposed to carrying that baggage over and over again.
Yeah. On a previous season, we had I'm sure you're going to know what I'm talking about. We had one of your supervisors on, we interviewed, and he talked about supervising an officer who lost his life to suicide. And one of the things he said there, now looking back, he said, there are things that I now know looking forward that I'm looking for in people. And so one of the things is just being proactively conscious of people around you and the things that you see and the things that they say, and being able to speak into their life maybe in an earlier time to be able to help people. And so I think that was really helpful when he was in here and he was sitting at the table and said, man, I couldn't see it then, but I could see it now.
Yes.
And so I've learned from that. And so I want to be, again, proactive and making sure I'm the person that can step into that arena and say, hey, I want to be here to help you out.
Well, that, and also training each officer identified as well. So that if they see it in their buddy, they can do something to help as to not recognize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Peer to peer is so powerful.
Yes.
It's one thing, it's one thing for a supervisor to see that in someone that they're in command over or in that position of authority over. But boy, on a peer-to-peer level, if we can recognize that in each other, regardless of what that rank is, peer-to-peer, if we will be aware of what's going on, and just if we do notice something that seems a little off, just be, care enough to ask a question or two, like, hey, I've noticed this, everything all right? Or, you don't have to interrogate, but just be caring.
Well, and I think, Gareth, you brought it up earlier in the episode with the fact that we've seen the change from productivity to relationship with the new officers. And so that value in building those relationships where we are spending time with people, we are developing those relationships, we know who people are. And so in doing that, you developed what you refer to as relational equity, and so we can say things and do things with those people that we might not have been able to do before because they value those relationships so heavily.
Absolutely.
So
we can have a brutally honest moment we've talked about the tools in the tool belt of wellness. So by and large, most departments will have some form of a peer support CISM team, whether accredited, not accredited, trained, or in various forms. We will see that. That's kind of a common thing these days. We do see that departments have a relationship with a licensed clinician, a mental health provider. That way they can say, ooh, that is something that needs to be dealt with by a professional, and make that appropriate referral out. Something that Roanoke County has chose to invest in, and we talked about earlier, benefactors of that, it is the chaplaincy. So talk to us a little bit about, in brutal terms, because there is, with everything, there's a good side, there's a bad side, from 31 years of experience and the perspective of a chief. Talk about chaplains and the chaplain unit in relation to law enforcement.
Well, today there's definitely no bad side to it. Years ago, we didn't have a chaplain, and then we had the program start, but I don't think it was as in-depth as we are today. So the benefit of what we're doing now, it's invaluable. You go to our department, and Chaplain Potter and Scarlett come in the building, and I'm guilty of it as well. The first thing I say is, "Hey, Scarlett," and I've broken that now, because I also am glad to see Chaplain Potter, but
Darren's
everybody's glad.
too.
Yeah, exactly. But everybody's glad to see Scarlett. But I think everybody benefits from the program, and if we use it as we need, it helps so much more. There were times that you just saw something critical, saw a critical incident, and went home, and you didn't talk to your buddies about it or anybody. But now we don't do that, and we know that we have to.
Yeah.
One of the things I've appreciated about serving your department is there are times when whether it be a commander or an assistant chief or whomever, at various levels, there are times if they've learned of a situation or that kind of thing, again, they're proactive about, hey, chap, I was talking to so-and-so today. Would you mind checking in with that officer about the situation? They already know that, they know that I'm contacting you. But I just wanted to reach out on their behalf, if you don't mind just checking in.
And the great thing is, we know that when we reach out to you, you will reach out to that officer and check on them to see how they're doing, and hopefully improve the situation.
Sounds like it's a resource and a tool you use. If you were talking to another chief,
it's a resource that we use all the time, and it's great to have.
Yeah. You were talking to other senior leadership. We talk across the state with departments, and we will often ask officers. You can ask the senior leadership, and they may have a perspective, but oftentimes when you talk to the guys that are in the middle of it, do you have a chaplain? What's his name? And by and large, across the state, we hear, yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. And I think I saw him at graduation. And so our immediate thought is that the guy you're going to share your hurts and pains with, the guy that you saw eating cupcakes 3 years ago?
Exactly.
I don't know, that we don't have social equity. And so in a lot of the departments we serve, there has to be a high buy-in. There has to be a buy-in from senior leadership to say, hey, we will allow the chaplain to be involved in these areas so they can intentionally build social equity that one day we can leverage to help someone be well and to make that handoff to a licensed professional.
Definitely.
What I heard out of that is as a call for Chief Poindexter to not only have treats for Scarlett in his office,
Oh boy.
but to have cupcakes for Chaplain Potter.
That was close. I thought he heard he needed a vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay, that was close.
Chief, I would say if that's what you heard, I would act on that.
We may be able to work on the cupcakes, but not the vehicle.
See, this is communication. This is why it's hard. There's what you say and then what people hear.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, Chief, as we start to wrap this episode up, we did have one question we thought would be really neat for you to be able to answer. And I think it's even better now hearing your story of going from that, I think you said 22-year-old in the academy, wasn't sure you really wanted to do this, to now all these years later, you're sitting in the chief's seat. If you have an officer who says to you that they want to become chief one day, what is your advice to them?
I would strongly advise that they persevere. You will have ups and downs. You will figure out that you like one part of police work or don't like another part, but you still have to learn it. You get into it, you learn it, and you endure it to the end to figure out if it's right for you.
In that, I guess it would be important that they get a broad spectrum of experience.
They would definitely need to understand the ins and outs of police work, but also budgetary issues, staffing, manpower, personnel issues. It's a broad base that you need, but if you invest the time, energy, and effort, then it can happen.
Well, Chief, we can't thank you enough for joining us. I really appreciate you be willing to take our invitation up on this. It means a lot. We weren't sure when we threw this idea out there if you all would be willing to do this, but so far the response has been pretty good, and we're very appreciative.
Well, thank you all for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, I guess we'll be seeing a lot more of you, or maybe you'll be seeing a lot more of us. I'm not sure which one, but hopefully that'll be a good thing and not a bad thing.
As long as there's cupcakes.
As long as there's cupcakes, that's right. So, hey, well, thank you guys for joining in with us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of the SHIELD Armory. Thanks for spending time today with us on the SHIELD Armory. We hope this episode brought encouragement, insight, and a reminder that you're not alone out there. Whether you're on the road, behind the desk, on dispatch, or at home, know that your service matters and you are seen. If this episode helped you in any way, share it with someone you feel it could be an encouragement to. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay safe, stay grounded, and as always, watch your six.